So if everything seems the same after, let's say, roughly 100 meters, we'll go ahead and do a transect en route just to get one under our belts. That would be great.
Yeah. I assume right here we're not going to have as likely a possibility of running into line. But once we get there, then
that ledge, yeah. We good with another move?
Yep.
Bridge nav. 30 meters, 170.
I will admit there's more down here than I initially figured there would be. We've already seen an octopus, we have some urchins, and we have a pretty high density of sea pens in this location. We also have the shrimp, and then I did see a smaller fish. Chris, I'm not sure if you learned a bunch from Tom on your few shifts with him, but might that have been a poacher?
I'm going to rewind. I was just looking down for a second. Give me 1 second. Poachers tend to be very straight and skinny and sit on the bottom.
Yeah,
but,
I would say that description matches what we saw.
Yeah. I think we have a few species of poacher, if I recall right. In general, hard to distinguish just from the video.
Also seeing some biogenic habitat in the soft sediment. Burrows, little piles, shell hash.
Yeah, if nothing else, we could probably do a push forward to
Yeah.
do a transect, take a Nifkin.
Eel pout.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's just backing up. Yeah, I'm thinking a scoop
take a push
for
forward,
Daniel.
even a scoop for Daniel. Yeah, so maybe we just make we do something halfway through this one, and then halfway. Well, I guess we can see after that.
Tritium.
But maybe the next shift could do something similar.
Yeah, nice big Vitridium anemone.
On
small rockfish we just passed. Oh, see, this is the fish I was talking about, Chris. It's to the left of the lasers.
Yeah. Yeah, that looks very poacher-like to me.
Poacher-like?
Kind of walk on the bottom.
Yeah, with their
stradius.
Yeah.
You just see a little move of the tail ways moving.
Yeah, we can also collect some urchins for Taylor Ann, and if any drift kelp we see, I'll also grab those for her because I don't think there's going to be much else to collect. And today is the last day, so we also want to be conscious of anything we collect in terms of sample processing before they get back to San Pedro, so they're ready to go to ship, which I think mostly relates to sponges because some of them have to dry out. So we are not prioritizing sponges on this dive today, other than small voucher samples if someone were to be in the science chat and request it. Otherwise, we've collected a lot responsibly and targeted collections, but we still managed to take some good samples of a lot of the species that we really don't know a whole lot about. So I'm feeling pretty good about what we've done so far and don't think we need to push it anymore on this last day. Good morning, Laura. Laura's joined the science chat because we are going to be getting ready to do a Q&A session at 9 a.m. So for those of you watching on Nautilus Live, you'll be able to submit your questions because Laura's going to be in the room moderating for us. So even if the message still shows that red dot, feel free to refresh your browser or clear your caches. But even if it's still red after you refresh, if you type in your questions, Laura will still be able to see them. So never fear. Well, now we can see definitely why they trawl for shrimp. This is a very flat, muddy habitat. And we've seen a pretty good density of shrimp here. And so that would be the method of choice to catch a bunch. So drag a net across the bottom of the seafloor and scoop them all up. There's also pots, pot gear for prawn as well.
Stay pretty much.
It's interesting. I wonder why the north side of Santa Cruz has bad visibility. We've been in other muddy locations so far, and we've had pretty good visibility. So I wonder what it is about this side of the island that it's pretty poor.
Santa Barbara Channel is semi-enclosed, right? Does it have as much of a flushing rate as the south side?
Probably not relative to the backside because that's really just looking offshore and mostly influenced by the southern flowing California current. And then inside the channel, we've got the counter current that comes up from the south and kind of swirls around inside the channel. Yeah, Nicole was saying, I think it was at NA123. There was a dive north of Santa Cruz Island, and the visibility is probably the same, if not worse.
Yeah, perhaps.
So, I mean, we are on the the total other side of the island, and it still seems to be the case.
Oh, yeah, you could take a ramp out. Well, you're gonna have a hard time taking a ramp out.
The way the shelf is here too, we're also a lot shallower than many of
Right,
our
in the
soft
mixed
bottom
layer.
dives.
Yeah, we're at 18% oxygen.
We're going to let you get ahead a little bit before planning the next move.
So Lizzie, there's looking on HiPAC, there's a little feature, maybe it's 100 yards south of us.
Yeah, like a little step.
So maybe we can check that out, explore that, and then afterwards, once we're on flat or soft bottom again, maybe start a transect.
Yeah.
Because it looks like it's pretty homogeneous after that.
Indeed.
But it will be cool at least to see what that little step up is.
Yeah, there's a few in this area, so I wanted to make sure we were deep enough that we would cross it at least once. I'm seeing some flatfish here. Very, very well camouflaged in this particular environment. I feel like this is the depth in the environment. We could potentially see whale scars or feeding divots from whales. At least gray whales anyway, since they don't dive as deep as, say, beaked whales, for example.
Now everybody's tuned in. Everybody wants to see a whale scar.
That's what we're hoping for. Some whale feeding action. I wonder how often they ingest like sea pens and other things living in the mud. What do we think these larger species of sea pens are? Is that with the thicker it's thicker around the peduncle, and then it's very fluffy, but it doesn't quite look like an anthotilum. Maybe a penatula? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're getting shallow. Aren't those primarily shallow? Maybe this is the right depth for that.
It could be. Let's see.
Cool.
Oh wow, there's a big fish.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe a penatula phosphorea potentially. Yeah, so we're seeing those little fish. We have poachers, and we also have eel pouts. And I've seen some flatfish and only one so far, but I've also been taking notes and typing one little rockfish.
There was a couple ratfish, I think, earlier. And that last one, of course, I wish Tom was on. Don't think I'm brave enough to guess.
Good morning. How are you guys doing? This is Laura.
Good. Good morning, Laura.
Morning,
How
Laura.
are you?
Seems like we were just here.
We were just doing this.
Yeah, except the environment looks really different now than last night.
Definitely different. Quite the opposite.
So now we're on the opposite side of the island, on the north side of Santa Cruz, and in much shallower water and much less complex habitat. So as you can see clearly, all soft bottom versus some of that stunning, amazingly diverse sponge reef and rocky habitat that we saw yesterday evening.
That's funny. So Chris, Tom heard you say his name and he's in the science chat now.
We've got some questions coming in for the public. Are you ready for a few questions?
Mm-hmm.
You bet.
Bring them on.
All right. So there's a question here that says, I'm extremely curious. I want to go into zoology later in life, and I would love to do something like this sometime. With the right education, could I possibly dive at some point? And how would I think they're asking, yeah, how could they pursue a path that would let them eventually do the kind of work that you're doing?
Definitely. So zoology, there's a number of applications that you can study or look at with ROVs. So marine biology and maybe the deep sea isn't necessarily the only kind of topic of study, but it's definitely one that is relevant to this kind of work. Chris and I both have our master's degrees in biology, and I got my undergrad degree in marine biology. And I mean, I just kind of fell into this coordinating position where I learned a lot about deep sea corals and sponges. And when the Nautilus was coming to the sanctuary, it seems like a good fit for me to lead some of these dives and plan where they were going to go and coordinate the logistics and the actual dives themselves. So a lot of people have different paths to kind of where they end up. And I will say this is only a portion of my job. I also look at human use within the sanctuary and exploring data sets that might give us more information about who uses the sanctuary and where and when. So, but there are deep sea biologists that do this pretty regularly. So there's a number of different ways that you could potentially start doing work like this. It just depends on your interest, really. So I would say definitely at least a bachelor's in science, and then potentially a master's. But again, you should really volunteer, test it out, and see if that's something you really enjoy. But my primary piece of advice would be to follow what you're really interested in and your passions.
On the Nautilus Live website, we also have a whole career section on our team page. So if you click over there, you can see all the different roles on Nautilus and the very different and varied paths that everyone has taken to get there. So to echo everything Lizzie said, there's also a lot of roles that go into ocean exploration. So for all the folks who maybe are considering different paths, other than marine biology or marine science, there's right now in the control van, there's a video engineer, 2 ROV pilots who are also engineers, a navigator, data logger, and then we also usually have an internship program and a science communication fellowship program bringing informal and formal educators out. So lots of different ways to get involved on Nautilus through the Ocean Exploration Trust, which is the nonprofit that owns and operates Nautilus. We also have, as I mentioned, the science and engineering internship program with tracks in seafloor mapping, ocean science, ROV engineering, and video engineering. So in COVID time, we had to delay or defer the 2020 participants to 2021, so we have not opened a new season of applications for 2021 for our internship or fellowship program, but all of that information is available on our website if you're curious to learn more. And the internship program is open to community college students, undergraduate students, graduate students, also recent students. So we definitely encourage folks from very different paths and backgrounds to apply. For us, we're looking for people who have drive and curiosity to learn. We're not necessarily looking for the people who have like the straight shot path to science. So definitely a lot of opportunities to get involved. And echoing what Lizzie said, just follow what you're interested in and keep trying. Takes many tries to be able to find the opportunities that work for you.
I have a follow-on question to that asks if anyone on the team got into science a bit later in life. This person's in their mid-30s and wants to go back to school for biology, but worried that it's too late.
Laura, you're cutting out quite a bit. I didn't catch that question.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. This person's wondering, they're in their mid-30s and would like to get into marine biology and wondering if it's too late or if they could start later in life. I'm wondering if anyone on the ship had started science later in life.
Yeah, I think I caught most of that. So it's never too late. I will definitely say that. I think kind of as Sam was saying, you really just need to follow your interests, and there's so many different ways to get involved with science. So if you don't want to be a hardcore field researcher, for example, you could be more on the statistical side of things. The education and communication and outreach is also a really wonderful arm of participating in science, because without being able to effectively communicate that to the public and students and anyone interested, you know, science just stays within its bubble, and science really is for everyone. And so I think it does require a little bit of understanding, of course, of the science that you're interested in, but not necessarily, you know, a hardcore field or lab researcher kind of depth of knowledge. But, you know, being able to understand what's happening and interpret it and relate it to the audience is an important part of it. And again, there's engineering, and, you know, there's robotics, there's all kinds of really cool ways to get involved with marine science. It covers many different disciplines. And so I would say if you're interested and you can, I would take maybe some community college courses or courses online to just, you know, dip your toe in if you've not really studied science at all before, just to get a better, clear understanding of just basic principles that you would need to know to start looking for jobs like that. And volunteering is also a really fun thing to do. I volunteered quite a bit and also led tide pool walks and just that kind of thing. Like you can get a lot of meaningful experience even through volunteer opportunities. So I definitely don't think it's too late. And I think you certainly need to explore your interests. And again, depending on your level of science background, there's definitely resources and options out there for you in terms of classes online or at community colleges, which I think could be pretty accessible to most people. But you got to start somewhere. So I think if you're really interested and serious, you know, dipping your toe in, baby steps, one day at a time.
Thanks, Lizzie. Keep me posted on if I'm not coming through clearly. I think it's actually everyone in my neighborhood is online right now. So
yeah, I hear you better now.
Oh, thank you so much for that tip. I'm going to go ahead and do that. You're the best. I didn't even know that was an option. On the last day of the last dive, I learned that. Thank you. Is that better now?
You're a veteran for the next season. Sounds
Yeah,
good.
I'm all ready to go. Let's see. Now I have to catch up here. What is your favorite sea creature that you've seen during the dives? This person has her friends and herself. They watch Nautilus together all the time and learning new things about the ocean, and they love seeing the crabs and shrimp especially.
Oh, cool. Chris, do you want to go first?
Sure. Mine thus far actually was the glass sponge reef, so less dynamic. You know, it wasn't moving around. In fact, most of it had died at some point in the past. But there's an organism that can produce these hundreds and hundreds of meters of structure under the seafloor, much like shallow water corals do on in places like the Caribbean or Australia and the Great Barrier Reef, Florida. It was just mind-boggling, so I think in terms of just kind of exciting discoveries, and that there is an organism, a creature that could produce such an amazing thing. That's sort of hot off the press. That was something we were just discovering and checking out yesterday on this watch and the watch before and immediately after it. I think that was, at least for this series of dives, maybe one of the most remarkable things and organisms I've seen. Lizzie?
Yeah, if we're talking about this leg of the expedition in 2020, I would say my favorite animal or favorite thing that I've seen so far would be it was a Santa Lucia dive, and we came across these enormous Paragorgia bubblegum corals and bamboo corals, and the current was really high, and they were all kind of bent over in in the current, but that was pretty mind-blowing and amazing. Otherwise, we did see some oh gosh, what are the Dumbo octopus? Those are always really cute, and we did see one of those, which I'm happy to see at any point on an expedition. What about Nautilus crew? You guys see a lot all the time since you're on the Nautilus. What are some of the favorite things that you've seen? Or maybe we'll come back to the crew at another time.
Another ratfish.
Here's a really interesting question from a science teacher who says, when the curriculum describes how science works, it describes a repeating sequence of hypothesis, theory, experiment with controlled dependent and independent variables being the foundation of all experiments. As a scientist, I find this almost entirely wrong, except in the pharmaceutical industry. To me, scientific discovery comes from careful observation first. And this is what I see you are all doing. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think so. In fact, that's exactly correct. The first step in the scientific process is observation. So go out and take a look and study, survey, and just get a feel for what's going on. That's step number one. So that's absolutely. Yeah. Then when you start seeing things going on, you can ask questions about it, and that's where you begin to formulate your hypotheses and do something more rigorous. But completely agree.
Yeah, Daniel Geiger with the Santa Barbara Natural History Museum is in the science chat and is also following along with our questions. And he says he completely agrees. You look first, you make observations, and then you ask questions following that. So if we see, for example, all of these sea pens and you don't see really tight clusters, you know, why is that? And then you ask questions, and then you can do an experiment if you wanted. But there's also a lot of information and important scientific breakthroughs or discoveries that can come from the observations in and of themselves.
Great question. Thank you. That's a great answer.
Image of just now.
Here's a question maybe for the crew. What is the furthest point on Earth that Nautilus has gone to? Have they been to the Southern Hemisphere or Alaska or Antarctica? And then to follow along with that, what's next for Nautilus after this expedition?
That's a great question. We've not been to any of the locations that you mentioned. If you're on the Nautilus Live website, you can click over to Expedition tab and click on all expeditions and see where Nautilus has been. Nautilus started its exploration program in 2010 in the Mediterranean and made its way out of the Mediterranean into the Atlantic, down the coast of the Atlantic to the Caribbean, into the Gulf of Mexico, and then 5 years ago crossed through the Panama Canal to get to the Pacific Ocean. And we've been there since. So that's also where our next couple of years will be focused on as well. As far as, and I think the most remote on that end, we've been all the way out to Papahānaumokuākea Marine National Monument in the northwest Hawaiian Islands. And then also all the way a little south of that into the Central and South Pacific to American Samoa and Independent Samoa. So I think that's the farthest that direction we've been. Any other? Yeah, there's plans to go further, but that's still materializing. And then as far as what's happening after this expedition, we head into port tomorrow. Is that already where we are? Tomorrow. Have 2 days in port, and then we're headed back out for one final ROV expedition of the season with a group of researchers from Scripps Institute of Oceanography at San Diego. And that focus will be on benthic habitats and microbial biomes, and their biopharmaceutical potential. Lots of jargon there. So again, head over to the expedition page on the Nautilus Live website to learn more about that expedition. And we'll be live streaming through that expedition and then moving into a month of seafloor mapping. So we also do live stream the seafloor mapping, but it looks a little different. You'll be looking at our multi-beam mapping screen instead of the underwater cameras here. And then our season wraps up in early December.
Thank you so much. You were mentioning sponge microbiomes, and a question just came in on that from somebody who studies sponge microbiomes and always gets excited when this person sees sponges in your videos, and wanted to ask, what's the most amazing sponge you have seen individually or as a group? And this can be in any sense, size, shape, or color.
Can I jump in really quick for this one and then throw it back to shoreside?
No,
again, on the Nautilus Live website, if you search on the page for Spongetopia or Spongerland, that was a site in British Columbia, the Eastern Pacific Seamounts expedition of 2017, I want to say, or 2018. This is a whole field of sponges, of massive trumpet sponges, bugle sponges, heterocones. I've never seen ROV Hercules almost dwarfed by sponges before. That's how big some of these were. The view from Argus, you could just see them all around the vehicle, going up halfway up the vehicle and then all the way to the top. And Hercules is about 7 feet tall, so these were very, very large sponges. That's my favorite.
Spongerland. That's sweet.
So you said if I type that into the Nautilus webpage, something will come up?
Yep.
And this was where? Sorry.
British Columbia. Eastern Pacific.
British, okay, good. Okay. Just want to make sure I got all that. I'm doing that now. That sounds incredible.
I'm definitely going to check that out. But there are a lot of people searching on that right now.
So hopefully the listener had a chance to watch last night too, and if not, if you just go onto the nautiluslive.org main page, probably where you're looking now, and you can scroll backwards in time. There's a little line beneath the video, and you can check out our the deep sponge reef that we came across just yesterday. So if you scroll back, 8 hours or so, I think you'll probably, give or take, you'll probably see it. And it was hundreds of meters long. We didn't even document its entire size. We didn't know how far it goes. Hopefully when we look at the signal from the sonar system, we might be able to get a better sense for its entire dimensions, but really incredible. So if you're loving the sponges, that's a great place to check out both the sponge reef itself and then neighboring areas of hard bottom, which were incredibly diverse with a wide variety of sponges.
Yeah, I echo Chris. Definitely go back. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Farreid sponges.
So yeah, Farreia and lots of heterocone, but the main reef building sponge we believe is Farreia. And I would say some of the sponges we saw last night were pretty incredible. There's these really large white barrel sponges. I'm looking at what Sam told us to search on the Spongetopia. So definitely none likely that were that big, but also the large heterocone sponges, when they just look like trumpets, those can get really big, and they have such intricate protrusions coming off on their outer sides I'm always wowed by a good heterocone. Thanks for that question. Happy to see that you're following along and interested in sponges.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the exact comment, but somebody said something along the lines of a group of sponges should be called a chorus of sponges because it looks like they have all their mouths open. I thought that was a
pretty cool comment. Good.
I like that one.
We could have used that yesterday.
We were talking about that last night.
Yeah, there's interesting names for groupings of animals. Yeah, pods of dolphins or schools of fish and a chorus of sponges.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that.
I'd say, let's upvote that one.
I was going to go with a mess of sponges since they just leave their spicules all over the floor.
Oh, no. Sampling Steve speaks.
Oh, that's funny. There's a question, I guess this is someone who watches the Okeanos as well, and they're asking why the Nautilus dives last multiple shifts and many hours, and NOAA seldom exceeds one dive in 24 hours. So I guess how come you're able to do the longer dives, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll take that one.
Yeah.
So the NOAA ships are operated by NOAA, which is a federal agency, so employees are on a normal kind of 8-hour workday schedule. So vehicles go in the water in the morning, and they need to come out before the typical workday is over. On Nautilus, we are owned and operated by the Ocean Exploration Trust, which is a nonprofit, and we receive funding from NOAA, but also from independent sources, so we're able to be a little more flexible on how we're able to conduct our operations. So we are able to run 24/7 with every role on the ship having triplicates. So there are 3 Herc pilots, 3 Argus pilots, 3 video engineers, 3 data loggers, 3 navigators. so that we can continually run operations. You know, we have ROVs in the water that are remotely operated. There are no people inside these vehicles, so we're able to stay down up to 72 hours, even longer if necessary. But I think so far our record is just over 72 hours because we're just able to keep going up here on the surface. And it maximizes the time that we're able to explore and collect video surveys and collect samples and maximize the time that we're out here, which is especially valuable when we're in such changing weather systems. You know, sometimes you might only get one dive in, but it might be 32 hours long. So
now our next cruise has a smaller ROV staff, so we can't operate as long because obviously with less people you can't man all the positions 24/7.
yeah, it'll be a different tempo. So 8-hour operations, ROV operations with extra time on either end to for the science team who will be coming on to process samples. So it's a very sampling heavy cruise, which means less ROV ops, more sample processing after the fact.
And as a science lead a couple times on Okeanos, we often, much like Nautilus, will often go to sites that are very poorly mapped, and it's often a requirement to map the sites overnight. So that requires us to not be in the water while the mapping operations are going on. So we can get the maps done, plan the dive in the morning, and then launch the vehicles. And that usually happens for every single place that we go to. And fortunately, we've had maps from this area from past cruises, so we haven't had to do that on this expedition overnight. So we've been fortunate to spend more time on the bottom.
That's a good point, Steve.
It takes
Thank
time.
you. That's.
And I will say
for
on
those of you,
other cruises.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say another way that we do things too is on a NOAA ship, like a fisheries survey vessel. We have a group of us that also request time on those vessels, NOAA ships, and we bring our contract out an ROV, and then Liz Clark's group with the Northwest Fisheries Science Center has an autonomous underwater vehicle. And given the number of crew and the operations that have to go over the side, they're both deployed over the side, it would be really difficult to launch both at the same time. And so what we do actually is 12-hour shifts, and so there would be 9 operations for ROV and then daytime operations for the AUV. So it depends a lot on the ship setup and how many people you can get to crew.
We do cruises like that as well. Oh, and
yeah, you guys have had Liz's AUV.
Yeah, and we were out with University of New Hampshire's autonomous surface vehicle, and it's doing the same sort of things. In fact, joint
Octopus just went in the hole there. That's cool.
Nice.
Sorry, Bob.
Yeah, so the ship's going to get modified so that we can... Oh, we're not talking about it.
Go ahead, go for it.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
No, you go ahead. You're the communications
I don't
person.
have the details that you do.
Oh.
Tell us.
We're going to be modifying the ship to be able to carry a new autonomous surface vessel. It's a monster. It's 23 feet long. Okay, we're not talking about it.
No, I just don't have the details you do.
Oh, you don't? Oh. Anyway, it's a very big autonomous surface vehicle that we're adding a crane and adding 12 feet onto the ship, or no, 12 meters, right? So 12 feet. Anyway.
Think of all the samples you could store.
That sounds very exciting.
It only can map to 500 meters, so it's a close-in shore sort of mapping work.
Or
that's a cool crab.
Yeah. Couldn't tell if it was in a shell or not, but I think it's a regular crab.
What kind of crab was that?
Tom Leidig is saying that's a box crab. which I think they're doing an experimental fishery with box crab in this region. So that'll be interesting. We know a researcher here at the University of California, Santa Barbara, who is doing some work with fishermen looking at box crab to kind of set up, you know, life history information and habitat distribution and preference and that kind of thing. So she'll be happy to know that we've seen one. She might even request these videos after the fact so she can review them specifically for box crabs.
So are box crab eaten as a fishery now, or you're saying that they might be set up as a commercial fishery?
I believe you can catch them now, but I think they're trying to get set up as a regulated commercial fishery. So they're looking into that, about how they might regulate it. They would need to know more about the life history, but I think you can catch them commercially now. There's just no specific fishery management plan for them, as far as my understanding goes.
And a question for those of you who are on the ship. Go ahead, go for it, Chris.
I was just going to add that down here versus up around Point Conception and central Northern California, Oregon and Washington, where you get Dungeness crab, those populations peter out the further south you go. As you get down to Southern California, we don't see them as much, whereas as Lizzie was mentioning, now down here we have the box crab sort of takes over, and the fishery's just beginning. So just one more note.
Thank you. And for those who are on the ship, how long have you been on the ship?
Can you say that one more time, Laura?
Oh, sorry about that. The question is, for those of you who are on the ship, how long have you been on the ship? And is there, you know, maybe explain some of the telepresence that you and Chris are actually on shore as scientists, but some people are out on the ship who are driving this up.
Most of us have been on at least since the 19th of September, some earlier. So a couple months.
And yeah, and then I don't know if we've caught the very last part of that question.
Oh, Lizzie, about maybe explain sort of the telepresence that you and Chris aren't actually on the ship, but you're watching and commenting and driving the ship live, or, you know, determining where it's going to go.
Yeah. So because of the pandemic situation and keeping everyone safe on the Nautilus, we decided that normally there would be a small number of people from our group that would be joining and sailing with those on the Nautilus to, you know, lead this mission while on the vessel and participate in the control van. But because of the pandemic and wanting to keep the crew safe and having them in their own protected bubble versus having scientists come on and off with each leg of the expedition, the Nautilus was really wonderfully set up to be able to lead these missions from shore. So Chris and I are in our own homes and offices, and we are using satellite to tap into the Nautilus's communications, and so we're speaking to them directly from our homes and offices. And their satellite system also allows them to broadcast all of their video feeds live and their own communications. And so we're using a software called V-Link, where we're communicating with the ship, which is also heard on the Science Party line, which is what's broadcasted live to all of the viewers like you. And so we have the ROV feed set up at home, so we're watching as we go. There is a few seconds delay, but nothing that hasn't been workable so far. So we've been able to make things progress smoothly despite somewhat of a small lag, and we're able to speak with them over this V-Link software as well. So we're not sailing with them, but we've been able to run operations and provide guidance as to where to go, how to move or progress between waypoints and what to collect. And we also have a science chat, which is like a little chat room where scientists ashore can sign up and we chat about like, oh, what's that? Can we collect that? Which has been a consistent part of the Nautilus communications with scientists ashore all along. So this isn't anything new, but it's still a tool that's helping us be able to identify and target species for collection and get the most out of the ship time that we possibly can by sharing expertise through the science chat and being able to communicate with the crew directly through V-Link.
So Science, we are
So we've been
starting to
standing
move up
watches
this,
from home.
We are starting to move up this ledge here. So we are seeing a slope, slight slope. And we should be starting to see a steeper slope within the next
I'm not
5
so
meters.
sure this is a real thing.
You're not convinced?
Yeah, I think you've got like some bad stitching between some maps here.
Interesting.
Because that doesn't look natural.
Yeah, it's kind of
It is a little bit upslope right here, though. More than it has been. Not significant, but.
Yeah, I didn't think that this would be any kind of shelf-like feature. I just figured it'd be almost like a slump we would go up to get to a slightly higher elevation shelf. That's what I imagined. But
and this is why ground truthing is important.
Yeah, contours don't usually make right angles in nature.
No.
Once we're past this area, so the purpose of going through here, as Lizzie mentioned, is just it's ground truthing, so we can figure out what's real and what's not. When we're done with that, after we've passed these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 contour, we'd like to set up for transect on our way to AY. But let's get through these just so we can confirm that they are or not something of interest.
Sounds good.
Chris, what do you mean by that when you say ground truthing?
So largely this area was uncharted, not uncharted, but unmapped or uncharacterized. And so only recently have we had the capability, the technology to really peer below the surface of the ocean and take a look at the sea floor and see what's down there. We've done that in partnership with many groups, including the Ocean Exploration Trust and Nautilus. We've done that by using ship-based sonar data. So a ship can send a sonar signal or sound signal down to the bottom of the ocean and figure out how deep the water is and how hard the bottom is in any given location. And that gives us an idea, but then we don't really know what's down there or what that signal corresponds to until we put eyes underwater. So that's why the combination of being able to map and use sonar data, which is one of the capabilities of the Nautilus, along with the video data, the visual data from the ROVs Hercules and Argus, are so handy. And so in selecting the sites for survey this mission, Lizzie looked through a lot of that information and data and identified features of interest or just features that were different and unique for us to take a look at, so that when we look at the data for all of the islands, when we see similar features, we'll then have an idea of what it actually is by putting together that combination of information sources. Good question.
Thanks. And we've got a question from a 16-year-old who loves animal sciences and is very curious as to the coolest animal, according to your team. I guess this is a group project that you've encountered over the years.
I got to leave that to the folks on the boat who have seen far more of these incredibly amazing and strange deep sea creatures than all have had the opportunity to see.
Yeah, they'll have better answers than us.
Who's answering?
You were.
Oh. I'm always impressed with the Pompeii worms, alvanellids, that live around the hydrothermal vents. So they live like within a couple of inches of water that's coming out of the vents at up to 400 degrees C. It's like hot enough to melt lead, and they're just inches away from that. And so the front of them can be, I don't know, near boiling water temperature, and the rear of them is in ice water. Oh, it's very strange critters. They look like aliens. So might want to look those up on the internet.
Adapted to life in extreme environments.
Definite extremophiles, yeah.
Are those the same species that are found in the Galapagos?
I believe so, yeah. I think you find them at any of the hydrothermal vents.
In that case, on nautiluslive.org, if you search for Galapagos vents, you'll be able to see those big tube worms.
Yeah, those things.
I actually got really lucky to be able to see those in person in the Alvin when I was diving on the hydrothermal vents in my one dive, deep dive of my career. They're pretty amazing. I would agree with you.
Oh, anyone else want to shout out favorite sightings? Well, Spongetopia was going to be one of mine, actually. Definitely one of the most bizarre things I've seen underwater. I do have a special place in my heart for the deep Staria jellies that we've seen. We've seen 2 over the last couple of years. If you're also on the nautiluslive.org website, you can search for deep Staria and see those. These are large bag-like jellies that have, you zoom in on them, a geometric mesh pattern across their body, and that helps them as they will entrap prey into their bag-like bell and start to dissolve it. That geometric mesh is a series of canals that will actually run nutrients through the jelly's entire body. So pretty neat critters, but also just really beautiful to watch. Very ethereal as they float through the water. And last year we found one that actually had a little resident isopod. So similar to on land, like a roly-poly, looks kind of similar, but it was living inside the bell. It's very cool to see, just drifting along. That's one of my favorites.
I'm definitely going to look those up. That sounds amazing.
Steve, you've got to have a favorite coral. I know we've talked about this. It can be a non-coral.
No, I'm going to go non-coral today. A few things. I really like swimming sea cucumbers. Oh, what is this? Wow, that's a big metridium.
Big metridium for not being on. Oh, I guess there is a little rock there.
The swimming sea cucumbers we were seeing last year were pretty awesome. I've seen swimming sea cucumbers in a lot of different ocean basins we've operated in, but the Pelagothuria specifically are really interesting. They're the only sea cucumber species that is entirely pelagic, no benthic stages of its life. Those are really interesting. I think we got some highlight videos of that on the website. And really any sort of predation event in the deep sea is really interesting, particularly if it's in like invertebrates on, for example, fish. Some of the food, a lot of these deep water predators and scavengers don't get much food. They may eat maybe a few times a year in certain parts of the ocean, or even once a year. And oftentimes, when you see a lot of these animals have very finely honed senses to find any sort of available carbon source on the seafloor or capture anything moving in the water column. Squat lobsters are a good example of this. you know, pycnogonids, preying on different types of creatures that we wouldn't expect them to eat. These types of interactions are really interesting because